Morning guys. Today we're going to talk some details about the specifics of what is going on with this COVID-19 virus thing. We throw around the term coronavirus, COVID virus, COVID-19. What are we really talking about? Let's break it down. COVID-19 is a disease caused by the virus SARS-CoV-2. When we say coronavirus, we're really just referring to the type of virus it is. It's a virus in the shape of a ball with a bunch of spikes on it. Around the outside, we're just referring to the shape of the virus when we say coronavirus. The coronavirus is a ball with spikes on it. Remember the spike. This is important. The spike is the key. These spikes are actually like keys that the virus uses to get inside your cells. These spike proteins make it look like something that the cell wants. So this is our cell, this is the virus, and the virus is going to trick the cell into thinking, hey, that's something I want. The cell is going to check it out to see if it's something it wants by using something that's embedded in its cell membrane. In the cell membrane, you have protein channel. Now these protein channels are designed to absorb specific types of molecules, and there's different types of protein channels for different types of molecules. The coronavirus, the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein fits into the ACE2 receptor like a lock and key, and the cell takes the virus into the interior of the cell. ACE2 is for cells that are controlling blood pressure. These are cells found in the nose, in the air passageways, in the lungs, blood vessels, heart, kidneys, even the intestines. In our last video, we talked about how a virus invades a cell and it uses that cell's machinery to reproduce and create more viruses. And what happens is that cell, whether it was a cell of your nose or your eyes or your leg or part of your digestive system, is no longer working for that purpose. Now it's working as a virus factory. We're still learning more and more about COVID-19 and what that means as a disease. One thing we do know is it does affect your lungs. It affects your ability to breathe. The alveoli are the parts of the lung that exchange gases between the air that you breathe and the blood going through your body. When the alveoli cells get infected, then they start to fill up with fluid around the outside of the alveoli and it collapses them. And when you have a collapsed alveoli, it can't absorb oxygen and it can't get rid of carbon dioxide. It can't function anymore. If you have collapsed alveoli, you are struggling to breathe. Every living thing gets infected by viruses. There are viruses that are for plants and animals and bacteria, and there are viruses that are for very specific species of different plants and animals and viruses that go into different bacteria. Something that infects my cat isn't necessarily going to get me sick. Something that infects my plant is not going to get me sick. Once in a while, a virus has a mutation that allows it to cross from one species to another. This is a very rare thing that happens, and like we talked about before with mutations in DNA, sometimes giving an evolutionary advantage that allows an organism to survive and reproduce, well, this is what's going on with the virus. As it's reproducing and copying that DNA, occasionally there's mutations, and sometimes those mutations mean that it's able to be more successful. In this case, more successful for the virus means being able to infect a different species than it started out in. You may have heard that the SARS-CoV-2, this started out in bats. That might be true. Bats have a very similar virus that they're infected with. We really think that there is an intermediate animal somewhere in between that got the virus from the bat and then passed it on to humans. Now let's talk a little bit about the difference between an infection and a disease. The COVID-19 pandemic has 114 million cases worldwide and 2.5 million deaths. 28 million cases in the United States alone. And these are only the ones we know about. Most of the time you wouldn't even know the battles that are going on inside your body. Your immune system is great. It really is. It handles things that you breathe in, things that you put in your mouth, things that got into your body one way or another, and it defeats them over and over again. You don't necessarily have to have a fever or coughing or sneezing or anything like that to know that you have an infection. You can have an infection and not have symptoms like that. The virus could be growing and living and reproducing inside your body and you'd never know it, or it could produce some symptoms. The virus might stay with you for a little while and then your body defeats it, or it could be a virus that stays with you for the rest of your life. That happens too. COVID-19 comes to us in two ways. It comes to us as an asymptomatic infection and a symptomatic infection. Symptomatic infections are ones that we think we understand. They have symptoms. You have a fever, you have coughing, you have shortness of breath, things like that. That That's a symptom, and that lets you know that you're sick. But COVID-19 also comes with asymptomatic, where people don't have symptoms. They might not even know that they're sick. Or if they have symptoms, they're very mild. They're just a slight cough for a couple of weeks and they don't think anything of it. This is scary because we can't tell who's sick and who isn't just by looking at them. I don't want you to be fearful, but I want you to know why we have safety protocols in place. Asymptomatic means someone who is not showing symptoms. They could have a fever or not. They could have a cough or not. They might not have any symptoms. Most COVID infections don't require hospitalization. You might think this is good news for you, but it's actually great news for the virus. That means it gives it a longer chance to stick around and get people sick and get more people sick, because the people that don't know that they're sick are able to spread the disease by coughing or wiping their mouth and touching things or putting their fingers in their eyes after they've been in contact with somebody who's spread the virus. The SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19 has actually spread pretty easily. At the beginning of the pandemic, it was spreading at a rate of 3 infections per person infected. That meant that if one person got infected, then they were likely to spread that on to 3 other people. Now, typically a flu virus is going to spread on to just one other person. One person gets the flu and then they pass it on to one other person. It's a relatively slow spread. COVID-19 was a spread that was really rapid, because when one person spreads it to 3 people, and those 3 people spread it to 3 other people each, so you have 9 people, and then 27 people with masking and social distancing and being careful. We've brought that infection rate down closer to what it would be if it was just the normal flu. That's why we have the safety protocols, because we want to keep that infection rate low. So that's good, but the infection has been with us for quite a while. It's been about a year since we had our schools shut down. The virus started spreading sometime in late 2019. Here we are 3 months into 2021 and it is still spreading around. That means there have been many generations of duplications of that viral DNA. The DNA in the virus that gets duplicated and copied and made new copies of as it builds new viruses every time it infects a cell is creating mutations along the way. Every now and then, one of those mutations makes something that is more advantageous to the virus, more of an improvement that makes the virus better able to either survive or reproduce. In this case, we have what are called variants. These are flavors of the virus. It's still SARS-CoV-2, and we have various versions of the virus, and some of them are more contagious than the original. What do I mean by more contagious? Well, for one thing, we talk about how the virus spreads. It spreads through water droplets that come out through your mouth when you're talking, you're breathing, you're shouting, you're singing, you're yelling, you're coughing, you're sneezing. Anytime those water droplets are coming out, they're spreading particles of the virus in the water droplets. Some versions of the virus are creating what's called a higher viral load, which means that in a droplet of the water, there are more viruses than in the previous version. That means there are more opportunities to infect somebody with that same droplet of water. All populations have variations to their genes. The genes are the little segments of code within their DNA. All populations have that, and over time, these mutations that the virus is having to its DNA, those variations are giving it an advantage to make it better able to survive and reproduce. This is a great example of evolution in progress. The SARS-CoV-2 virus that we had at the end of 2019 is not the same virus that we have now. We have different versions of that virus, and we are battling different types.
At the same time.
Stay safe, stay healthy. Have a great day.